أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على محمد بن عبد الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا. My brother and sister Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Yesterday we spoke about humbleness in the salah and concentration in the salah and focusing in the salah and how important that is in the changing of the behavior of the person who acts that humble. And we also said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran says inna salata tanha anil fahsha'i wal munkar. If the salah is performed the right way, the way that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, not the way that the Prophet seen a man praying in the masjid and he returned 3 times, because this kind of salah will not affect the person's behavior, will not give its fruit that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promised in the Quran. Today inshallah we're going to speak about how to acquire humbleness in a salah, because everything has a how to it and everything has to have a way to do, and everything in Islam or in the regular life in general comes with practice. Even becoming a good believer comes with practice, because it took the Prophet ﷺ 13 years in Mecca raising the level of Muslims in Mecca. And anything that even humbleness in a salah in this regard is also an act that comes with practice. The first of these ways to acquire this great trait, which is humbleness and focus in the salah, is to visualize the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the God that you're praying to. When you stand facing mihrab, facing qibla, know that you're praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's no doubt, everybody knows that he's praying to Allah, but have this present at the time of starting the salah. Have this present at the time of starting the salah. Know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is directing his face to you, and know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching you, and know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants you to perfect this salah that is done for no one except him. Look at the first act in a salah, the word Allahu Akbar, that people take for granted because they get used to it. Allahu Akbar most of the time, all the time when they start the salah. If you just reflect on this word, the word Allahu Akbar, Allah is greater than business that you left, than things that you are going to think about in the salah, than the children and the family left behind, than anything. And that's why some scholars said when a person does this, it is as if he's thrown everything behind. Everything I'm throwing behind my back, I'm concentrating, I'm focusing, and I'm going to beginning an act to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, throwing everything behind. That's the meaning of the word Allahu Akbar. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said in this regard, إِنَّ أَحَدَكُمْ إِذَا قَامَ يُصَلِّي فَإِنَّمَا يُنَاجِي رَبَّهُ فَلْيَنْظُرْ كَيْفَ يُنَاجِي. When a person, a Muslim, stands up to pray, he is talking to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then you decide the way you talk to Allah. You talk to Allah, Alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen, Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim, Maliki Yawmiddin, without understanding really what you're saying, then you are not really having the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala present in your mind. But if you reflect on what you're saying and you visualize Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala looking straight at you, you will be really in full concentration during salah. One of the companions, I can't recall his name now, I believe it was Uthman ibn Affan, when he makes wudu and is about to pray, his face becomes so yellow, becomes pale, and he becomes scared. He asked him, "Oh Uthman, you're going to be about to pray." He said, "Because I'm going to be facing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala." This is the real visualization that I'm talking about now, to know that Allah is watching you, to know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching you. And also one of the things that will help you is to reflect on what you're saying. Know, for example, what is Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Those of us from Arabic background, for example, pass by it because it's an Arabic word and they heard it a lot, so they don't really reflect on it a lot. They don't reflect on the fact that alhamd, for example, is a word that's much more comprehensive and than the word ashukr, for example. Hamd meaning, oh Allah, I thank you and I praise you at the same time. Have you ever reflected on this? Lillah, to Allah, the God of the universe, and so on. Malik Yawmiddin, and so on and so forth. So when you reflect on what you say, this will take you more time to pray. And when you take more time, of course, you concentrate and focus and try it. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ, by the way, in this regard says, if a person makes wudu, made it perfectly, and then he made 2 rak'ahs, and the Prophet says, لا يحدث بهما نفسه. In the salah, he is not talking to himself, he is not focusing on anything else. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will forgive all his sins. Just like this, just because of this 2 concentrating rak'ahs. Look how Allah is merciful, and look how we do not take advantage of that mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A lot of people stand up and pray 10, 20, 30, 40 rak'ahs, but they're not reflecting on anything. They're finishing fast because they want to finish fast, so they become proud at the end of Ramadan or the end of the day that they're reciting, oh, I finished such and such surah. Look at Qatada ibn Nu'man radiallahu anhu. He stood up at night reading nothing except قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ, the surah, and he kept on repeating this till the Fajr time. Imagine that. He's reflecting on every word of it. Allah, who is Allah, how great He is, what kind of reward Allah is getting people when they concentrate and focus on the salah. Ahad, that has no son and no daughter and so on, nobody's like him, he's unique, and so on and so forth. So all these meanings came to him during salah, and the more he repeats, the more meaning come. Because even if you read a book, if you read the first time, you will understand things from that book. But if you read a second time, you will pay attention to things that never paid attention before when you read it the first time. And this is how it works with Quran too. So this person kept on repeating this ayah the whole night, reflecting on it. Imagine that. Even though he can read the whole Quran, as Uthman ibn Affan once did next to the Kaaba. He read the whole Quran in 1 rak'ah. Also, one of the things that will, inshallah, help you focus and humble yourself in the salah is to remember death. Because if you remember death and that this might be your last salah, even though we don't take it seriously, we say, okay, I'm 40, I still have 20 more years.